I love Obsidian and Bethesda. They're some of my favorite developers of all time. There are some lessons that they need to go all the way back to Morrowind to learn, or in the case of Bethesda, relearn. Morrowind was a keystone game for a lot of us RPG fans, and for me, it was my first Bethesda open world game. I remember being both confused and excited at the same time since we didn't have the internet yet at my house, so I couldn't look up a guide. Yeah, I know I'm old. There are modern examples of games that aren't explicit in telling you exactly what to do or where to go, like Elden Ring and other From Software games. It avoids one of the biggest issues that I have with modern gaming: the almighty icon. The human brain is simple. We see shiny thing, we go to shiny thing. And that applies when you put your big shiny icon on a map. That's helpful for people who prefer a linear experience, but there's more than one way to attract the eye, and that brings us to a theme that I'll be repeating throughout this video: the idea of show don't tell. It applies to video games in a bit of a different way than it does literature, since it's an interactive medium. It isn't a new concept, and it's very intuitive if you think about it. In Morrowind, you hear about the Red Mountain. When you get closer, the ash beats you back. If you get even closer, the ghost fence blocks your path. It starts as a subtle centerpiece until eventually you get so close that it becomes an all-encompassing obsession with one question: how do I get up there? It's an idea that has permeated through many different iterations of Bethesda's games. You see that thing over there? You can go there. That's one thing that the Outer Worlds didn't really have, and Avowed felt like it had some of those ideas starting to come in, so Obsidian may be moving more in that direction as they do more 3D games. Avowed allowed you to jump around in maps, had interesting themes for each region, and it pushed you to explore by giving you loot that made it worth your time, but it still isn't the same feeling you get from a game like Dark Souls, where each new weapon you find can fundamentally change the way you play the game. There's still a ways to go to recapture the feeling of how cool it felt to finally get to the city of New Vegas and the Strip. As for Bethesda, it feels like over time they've lost the why of it. Why does that idea resonate? And why is that so compelling? To the point where in Starfield they mostly moved away from the idea. Which is fine if you want to explore something different, but you need a suitable replacement to push you forward, and I don't think they really found one. Even though I personally enjoyed Starfield, I can admit it has some issues. There's also a bit of a fear to let people feel weak. At the beginning of Morrowind, you can barely slap a worm to death, and by the end you're fighting godlike beings. Not so in later Bethesda games, and in games like Avowed and the Outer Worlds, that concept didn't really much enter the picture. I'm hopeful that Obsidian can pull it back and return to some of their roots with extensive RPG systems, but I kind of get why they pulled away. The truth is that their system-rich RPGs just didn't really sell that well. Tyranny, Pillars of Eternity 2, they reviewed well, but sales weren't great. You know what did sell? Grounded. That's not to say anyone's doing something wrong by enjoying Grounded. It's a good game that deserves to have an audience. And at some point, you have to put the company's longevity first. I imagine that's why Camelot Software stopped making RPGs like Shining Force and Golden Sun and started making Mario sports games. Now, the reason that doesn't make me lose hope is because you can sell copies and still have system-rich, choice-filled, and awesome RPGs. Larian put out the blueprint, and it honestly isn't that far off from where developers like Obsidian and Bethesda started. Baldur's Gate gave us D&D's deep RPG systems, dice rolls, tons of exploration, added cinematic and immersive storytelling, and did it while earning hundreds of millions of dollars in profits from a developer who not that long ago was a niche game studio who dreamed big dreams. And that brings us back to the idea of show, don't tell. Much like Morrowind, Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't tell you exactly what to do every step of the way, and some of the coolest things you can find are hidden. There are breadcrumbs, trails, hints. You talk to somebody in town, and they let you know, hey, there's this wizard guy doing some crazy shit. Stay away from that guy. So, of course, you have to go check it out. Morrowind also wasn't afraid of letting you break things, like adding in levitation. I can't tell you how much time I spent levitating in random places, looking through every little corner for hidden loot, or using an Icarian flight scroll and flying across the map to my eventual death. And yet here I am, 23 years later, and RPGs haven't really done much levitation at all since. The closest we got was Elix, and flying around with your jetpack and slamming into the ground at high speeds. I guess my point here is to not underestimate your audience. Sure, there are plenty of perks of chasing the gravy train of accessibility and linear exploration so they can experience more of your game, but you can also find yourself losing the most treasured moments that all of us that play RPGs love. As an example, Morrowind has a bit of a steep learning curve. There aren't long-winded tutorials teaching you how to play the game, and this is one of the lessons modern RPGs can stand to take a note about. Again, show, don't tell. When you pause the game to tell your audience about intricate details in your game systems, that pulls them out of the immersion. Those opening minutes are some of the most important to determine whether someone will keep playing. You don't have to pull a Morrowind and drop a flying wizard on their head 5 minutes in. But you can showcase how to play through early quests that showcase systems and also create a sense of wonder for what's next, which is exactly what Flying Wizard Man did. Hey, here's something cool. Use it, see what happens. That's one thing that Starfield and Avowed did a pretty decent job of, but there are plenty of other companies out there who have egregious tutorials that feel like a massive waste of time. So I'm curious how everyone else feels about this. Are there lessons from Morrowind or other classic RPGs that you think current developers should learn from? Let me know in the comments. I do videos about RPGs of all kinds, so if you like that, subscribe. Thanks for watching.